On the surface, it feels like Capcom has been carrying the weight of non-stop criticism around Resident Evil. On one side, you've got the longtime fans who want the series to return to its roots, the classic style, the iconic characters, the old-school survival horror vibe. On the other side, there's a newer audience that embraced the modern direction and wants that evolution to continue. And that tension is exactly what led us to Resident Evil Requiem. With this new entry, Capcom seems to be trying to strike a balance, blending the legacy and atmosphere that made the series legendary with the bold shift that began with Resident Evil 7. The big question is, did the game actually succeed in doing that? That's what we're here to find out. Today's review will be completely spoiler-free, so you can sit back and watch without worrying about the story being ruined. Let's get into it. The game's events begin with Grace Ashcroft, a young FBI intelligence analyst. Her boss tells her that they found another body, a corpse showing the same symptoms as the others that she's been investigating. He orders this brave, sharp, and intelligent woman to go investigate the case at the most terrifying and disturbing place you could imagine. After that, we transition to a rainy street scene. Grace travels to the Wrenwood Hotel, a place tied to her past and filled with terrible memories. Just across the street, Leon S. Kennedy, the legendary well-known hero, is also investigating the mysterious deaths. They discover that all the bodies share a common factor. They are survivors of Raccoon City who have become infected and are decaying in this strange way. And so, the story of our game begins, in a truly imaginative way. Honestly, the game's opening is fantastic. It pulled me into its world almost immediately with its mysterious tone, strong pacing, and intriguing story setup. The way the characters are introduced feels quick but very clear, and over the last two entries, the developers have really mastered the art of drawing players in without overcomplicating things. But with Requiem, they honestly hit their peak, especially when it comes to the visuals. Graphics are usually your first impression as a player. Before you fully understand the mechanics or get deep into the story, it's the visuals that sell you on the experience. And Requiem absolutely nails that first impression. Starting the game on a rainy street, neon lights reflecting off wet pavement, different shop signs glowing in the dark, it immediately sets the mood. Then you enter the hotel with its antique, unsettling details and eerie atmosphere. The character models look incredibly detailed, the zombies are disturbingly well designed, and the lighting system ties everything together beautifully. Every location feels handcrafted with strong artistic direction and serious attention to detail. Now, I won't lie, in the second major area, which is where you spend most of your time, I sometimes felt like I was playing Resident Evil Village. In other sections, I got strong Resident Evil 2 Remake or Resident Evil 3 Remake vibes. There's definitely some noticeable asset reuse from previous titles. On its own, that's not necessarily a problem. But when you clearly recognize reused assets as a player, it can slightly pull you out of the immersion. It makes you wonder why the developers didn't create more new assets instead of relying on older ones. Still, overall, the visual presentation is excellent, and it's obvious the studio put a lot of effort into strengthening the horror atmosphere through environmental design, and especially creature design. The game is genuinely terrifying, especially during Grace's sections. Her gameplay leans heavily into survival horror. You feel vulnerable, under-equipped, and constantly on edge. Resources are limited, her tools feel weak, and if you play in first person, hearing her shaky breathing and nervous voice reactions adds a whole new layer of realism. Her voice trembles, her fear feels authentic, and it makes sense. She's facing these horrors for the first time. Her reactions feel believable compared to what she's witnessing, and because her equipment is limited, you as the player constantly avoid confrontation. You sneak past enemies, you run instead of fight, and that only amplifies the tension and fear. Then you switch to Leon, and the energy completely changes. With Leon, you feel hyped. He knows these creatures, he understands what he's dealing with. His movements are faster, his reactions sharper, and he carries himself with confidence. When you run into an enemy as Leon, escaping isn't your first instinct like it is with Grace. You engage, you fight back. His combat experience and stronger loadout make you lean into encounters instead of avoiding them. And somehow, the game manages to merge two styles that usually don't blend well together, action with Leon and survival horror with Grace. And surprisingly, the combination works perfectly. You know that feeling in some games where you have multiple playable characters and there's always one you secretly don't enjoy playing as, where you're just waiting for their section to end so you can get back to your favorite character? That feeling doesn't exist here. Switching between Grace and Leon feels smooth and balanced. Neither character feels forced, and neither feels more important than the other. And honestly, that kind of balance is rare in games with multiple protagonists. There are also gameplay differences that reinforce their identities. Leon doesn't have an item storage box, but he can carry more items overall. Grace can access storage, but her carrying capacity is smaller, and she's clearly physically weaker. These small design choices really strengthen the contrast between their playstyles. One thing I do have to criticize Capcom for is the marketing. They showed way too much. The trailers, previews, early demos, if you followed everything before release, you basically saw around 70% of the game already. That definitely hurt the surprise factor for me. Putting that aside, the gameplay itself is incredibly fun. For action fans, this entry might be the peak of the series in terms of combat. The shooting mechanics feel polished and satisfying. There's constant variety, moments where you're fighting intense waves of enemies, moments where you're solving environmental obstacles, and other times where you're simply exploring, trying to find your way forward, or searching for key items to progress. The objectives are clear, but the path isn't handed to you. You're given a goal, and you have to navigate the area, explore, and figure things out yourself. And when I say Capcom did something special here in terms of design, I truly mean everything. Level layout, environmental puzzles, the structure of the massive location you're trapped in, and the way the game subtly teaches you how the space connects together. It genuinely feels like the developers anticipated every possible move you might make. Every corner feels intentionally crafted, technically impressive, artistically impressive. There aren't many puzzles toward the end, and boss fights are relatively few. But honestly, I don't think the game's concept or pacing required a large number of boss battles. The ones we do face make sense narratively. Nothing feels forced or exaggerated. Sometimes adding more would actually hurt the experience. Instead, they compensated with extremely creative creature designs. Strange, disturbing, and genuinely terrifying enemies that stand out visually. There is, however, a section in the first half of the game where it feels like the story almost disappears. After the explosive opening and before the final chapters, the focus shifts entirely to gameplay. Very few cutscenes, almost no major dialogue, barely any documents or lore hints to expand the narrative. I can somewhat understand why. This is where the mechanics fully open up, and they wanted players to focus on gameplay systems without heavy story interruptions. Still, I won't lie, that pacing decision bothered me a little. But if your goal is to simply enjoy the experience, then we're talking about one of the strongest games released in recent years. A powerhouse of a title. From its characters, to its gameplay, to its intense action moments, to its horror atmosphere, to its graphics and level design, nearly every technical and artistic aspect is executed at a high level. Requiem impresses in how it expands the world, connects narrative threads in unexpected ways, and possibly delivers the best entry in this new trilogy. It successfully blends high-energy action with terrifying horror in a balanced experience that, in my opinion, comes very close to a 10 out of 10. That's my take on the game. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to help support and improve future content. I'll see you in the next video.